I wanted to kind of ask you about, now that you've been in Moscow, because I know our listeners, our audience wanted to hear what it's like. Um, there's a lot of Russophobia, as you know, right now from the West, hysteria that's very negative towards Russians. And today, I told you just before we came on that it was announced that the EU has decided to break its agreement with Russia about visas. They're going to make it very difficult and expensive for Russian tourists to travel around Europe, which is just, it's ridiculous. But I wanted to see, if the same bias applies to Americans going to Moscow. Like, have you experienced any of that, or how are they treating you, and that sort of thing?
Yeah, no. I mean, people have been really nice. I mean, they do, some people get frustrated, when you don't speak the language, more so with that they don't speak it. They get frustrated. I haven't really experienced any negativity towards me. In fact, there's more of an interest. What are you doing here? Why are you here as an American? What's wrong with you? Like, why would you be here right now? Rather than like, oh, like Yankee go home. And that is what Americans experience in a lot of parts of the global South, because of the exploitation and the imperialism that certain countries in, let's say, Nicaragua and certain, but it's mostly from the political aspect of not towards American people as much as the arrogance of the American government. And that's something that every single country that has been placed as being adversarial to the United States says. Daniel Ortega, in his inauguration, he said, we love the American people. It's the American government we have an issue with. And I think that applies to so many people and countries that are painted as adversarial. People don't hate Americans here. They don't even hate the American culture. In fact, they still have a very positive view overall, at least in Moscow, about the West, particularly the United States. They listen to American music. There's a lot of places that, whether it's restaurants or bars, that have American names. They love American, like, karaoke. There's so much love for American movies and Hollywood. In fact, I mean, the Russians are very, very, very fond of film. And Russian film has a lot of history as well, but they really do love American films and stuff. And so I think that this idea that they hate Americans and they want death to all Americans, whether it's Russians, whether it's Iranians, whether it's Syrians or Chinese, that's just not the case. It's our government making us feel like these people hate us because they don't want us to understand that they're the problem. And these people simply know that they're the problem. They know that Americans aren't really, that Americans are propagandized, and Americans, there's this idea that Americans are dumb because there's a lot of miseducation in our country, as we've seen displayed. People don't even know where Taiwan is. So that sort of thing. And that is true. Like when I visited Europe itself, that was true. Making fun of Americans for being loud and for being self-centered. And I think that is a product of our creation, meaning it's done on purpose, through miseducation, through distraction, through entertainment. And we're distracted.
And through the propaganda of American exceptionalism. Like there's this view by Americans, this arrogance when we go, and Joe Biden is the epitome of that. Like when he was discussing firing, back a few years ago, firing the Ukrainian, I think it was like one of the lead attorneys, who, by the way, was investigating Hunter Biden, because Hunter Biden had his, was getting paid like $50,000 a month by Burisma. And three grown adult children of some of the representatives, Nancy Pelosi, I think, Dianne Feinstein, was it Dianne Feinstein or another one, and then Joe Biden's son, all had jobs with Burisma. And it's amazing. Like on one hand, they put down other European nations, America does, or Russia, but it's exploiting it at the same time. It's bizarre and it's hypocritical. And of course, when I brought up to you about the banning of the Russian tourists, like trying to make it very difficult for Russian tourists to go to Europe. I mean, that's unheard of. That's ridiculous. I mean, what are your thoughts on banning the tourists?
Yeah. So if we replace Russians with Jews,
Mhm.
wouldn't the world be appalled and have a problem? I mean,
Oh,
haven't we gone through this already? I mean,
yeah.
it's not even just that. It's they've been destroying every ounce of their culture. They've been telling people like in Ukraine that they can't speak Russian.
Mhm.
And then of course
Mhm.
Europe has done, and both the United States have destroyed the
Yeah.
lives of many athletes that are Russian, ballet dancers, musicians, artists, as if it's their fault. And they've also just done things like bans Russian literature in some places, burning books. Like, what is this? This is an attack on an entire culture, which is the reason Russia has stood up to the West and NATO, because it's almost like if they allow this to happen, it just, that would be the end of Russia. And I think that it was something that wasn't easy for Russia to do. A lot of people didn't were really split on this issue, because even though they might support their country, they didn't want the sanctions. They didn't want the economic backlash that happened immediately after, Putin's military intervention into Ukraine. And I still call it that because that's what it was initially. I mean, he was asked by the people in the Donbass for years. He was criticized for not going in sooner. And I think
Mhm.
a lot of it had to do with the timing. A lot of it had to do with, okay, like there's no point. This is a point of no return now. We can't not go in there, because now, of course, China is playing a bigger role. 8 years ago, a lot of people, I don't think we knew what we know now. I think there's more of an awareness, and
Mhm.
there's more of an opposition to the West as well. So I think that also the timing had to be correct. But unfortunately, in these 8 years, 14,000 people in the Donbass have been killed, and
Yep.
some have been living under just awful conditions. And if you watch any of the documentaries on RT that are there, countless of them, or if you watch Ukraine on Fire, if you watch any of the media that has been totally censored in the West, you will
Mhm.
see that. You will at least see this other perspective. There's a reason they're not letting you see that. If they
Yeah,
had
I mean,
nothing to lose,
yeah,
they
it's really
wouldn't censor it.
stunning about trying to erase 1,000 years of history and culture and scientific advancement, and the first people in space, and all of the cultural achievements and artistic achievements of Russia. It's ridiculous trying to rewrite that history, like Stephen Bandera trying to whitewash him and make him like he was a good guy when he was a Nazi,
Mhm.
collaborator, and was responsible for killing, I don't know, 33,000 plus Jewish and other people in during
Yeah.
yeah, that time. So it's bizarre. Like Vogue, I had a conversation with someone that Vogue magazine was trying to rehabilitate Stephen Badera's image, and it was stunning to see that in corporate press. But yet I guess we shouldn't be surprised at the amount of
No, it's
corruption
as
happening.
American as apple pie.
Yeah.
We've completely helped Nazis. I mean, since World War II, and
Yeah.
like, I mean, we continuously did it. We continuously covered for them,
Mhm.
and they have infiltrated our own government. I mean, that is a fact. I mean, that is, what was it? Is it Operation? I forget. I don't know why I'm blanking out, but it was a particular operation. I think it was Operation Paperclip. But it was basically, they when I talk about fascism, when I say fascism, I mean the people in suits, the people with power that manipulate and move the pieces to manipulate the rest of the world. And it's not
Right.
like you don't have control as a person, is that they do everything they can to take away your people's power, and they also psychologically make people feel like they can't fight against this evil. And I think there's like, you have to be very careful to, when we talk about the establishment, when we talk about the elite, the predator class, I like to call them, because there's nothing elite about them. They think they are above everybody else, but when we talk about them, in this cabal of people, and these people, the globalists, we have to be careful to understand that these people come together because they have vested interests, and they're a 1% or a fraction of a 1%. They're very powerful people, but that doesn't mean that you don't have control, and that doesn't mean that there's no opposition to that. And I think there is opposition, not just in nation states, but within nation states, within different groups within nation states. There's oppositions here. You can't say all of Russia is one thing, all of China is one thing, all of the United States is one thing, because as we know, in the United States, we have completely different points of views all over the United States. So you
Right.
can't just say everybody else is going to think the same. And then they don't. And that's what you find out when you live in Russia, is you find people that are supportive of Putin. You find people that aren't crazy about him, but you do find a lot of people that do understand that the West has done a lot of damage. And they know their history way more than we know our history, which is why we're so propagandized.
Right, right, because of the lack of education and all of that that's happening right now.